Hi, Baptiste.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm very good. I'm very good.
Okay.
We had a long trip from Paris, France, but we're glad to be here.
Okay. Well, it's good to have you.
Thank you.
So, before we get into your album and the music, I'd like to step back a little bit and, well, you've professed your love for singer-songwriter Townes van Zandt.
Yeah.
Do you remember being introduced to him?
Well, actually, Townes van Zandt is not famous at all in France, and I remember I discovered him when I was maybe 17 years old, and at that time I was listening to a lot of melancholic indie pop songs that my brother was listening to. So I was listening to Nick Drake, Elliott Smith, and stuff. And I think it's on a review on the web that I saw the name of Townes van Zandt appearing, and at that time I was listening to a lot of new music. So I right-clicked on this name and started to listen to his music, and it was like immediately there was something weird happening in me. That was the first time that I had such strong and powerful feelings inside of me, and I was like, I think I'm in love with that guy, with the music of that guy, and like all what he represents and his words and stuff.
And then was it maybe when you clicked on it, was it a song in particular? Or?
I don't remember which song, but I remember that the day after I went to my record store in Paris and I bought the full discography of Townes van Zandt.
So you were
it was good. One song was good enough to make me buy the whole stuff.
And this is going to be very difficult to answer then, but what was it about him, about his voice maybe, about his playing? And
there was something about his voice. I tried to think about that afterwards because I've been listening to, it's been now 13 years that I'm still listening to him almost every day. There is something with his voice, of course, that is, I would say authentic. He doesn't try to lie, you know, he doesn't have the best voice ever, he just sings how he sings. And in a way, I feel like this guy is telling some kind of truth. You know, he's sad. He was a sad guy, and he's just putting his sadness into songs. And it sounded so familiar to me without knowing the guy and without knowing that kind of music before, because I didn't know anything about folk music or country kind of stuff. And that's why that was so particular to me.
So at this age, at 17, you say, so, and you say that you weren't listening to folk music, country music a lot. So, what did you play music or did you write music at that age?
No, absolutely not. I could play a little bit of guitar because I have three brothers who play a little bit of guitar, and you know you play songs, you cover songs. In summertime to impress girls, so I could do that a little bit, but I had never written any songs, and the first time I really wanted to write songs was after discovering Townes van Zandt, and then some other artists like John Prine and Steve Earle and all those singer-songwriters from America.
Sure. And well, you've mentioned it already, and then I think Townes van Zandt is a great example of this, where it can be very sad music. So when you started writing, is that kind of the source where you started writing from?
Yeah, actually that's something that's weird with me, and I know with a lot of other people that the strongest emotions that I have listening to music are when I listen to sad songs. And I don't know why. I'm a big fan of Leonard Cohen as well, and there is something about the melancholy of these guys that really moves me deep inside me, and I can't help it. And it's not the same with happy, smiley country songs, for example, or whatever. I can like that as well, but the strongest emotions that I have are for sad songs.
So do you remember the first song you wrote?
Actually, not really, but because I remember it was when I was 19, and I wrote a lot of songs that were pretty bad because they were in English. Because I was listening mainly to American music at that time, so I wanted to imitate my heroes, and so I started to write in English. My English it's still not very good, but it was very bad at that time. So that was very bad songs. But and then I switched to French a few years later because I realized that those guys, what I liked with those guys as well was the fact that they were like true poets, and you can't really pretend to be a poet if you write in a language that's not yours. So that's why I switched to French and tried to work on my own language.
Did it take you long then to kind of develop your sound or your voice, the kind of the way you wanted to present your music?
Well, the thing is, I think the fact that I liked Townes van Zandt so much, and I realized that he didn't have the perfect voice, or at least it's not a voice that you hear on TV every day or on the radios and stuff. So I didn't have any complex about that. So I started writing songs and play those songs. And I didn't care about how my voice would sound to others. I was like, well, this is my voice. I think it's tuned with the guitar. And yeah, there has been a process for sure within the first years that I was writing songs, when my songs were not the same after 5 years, and my voice sounded differently as well. But it was a natural process, I would say.
And well, my French is limited, so I couldn't understand every lyric. But do you write from an autobiographical standpoint?
I think it all comes from some kind of autobiographical stuff, but it's not. There is not any of these songs that are I tell stories in my songs that it's not true stories, but it comes from a true event or a situation, and then I develop and I imagine a lot of different stuff from that. But yeah, and it comes as well from the melancholic part of me. It's way easier to write songs when you're sad, or at least sad songs. I've tried to write happy songs when I was happy. It didn't work.
Okay. So I find this interesting because you say you kind of when you went back to singing in your native language, French, it kind of did you then start to delve into French folk musicians and
Yes, and that's how I managed to actually write songs in French. I've been writing poems and short text in French since I'm 15, let's say, but I could not write songs in French until I decided to listen to a lot of French music at some point. And I went back to those old French, not really folk singers, but we say chansons, like Jacques Brel, Barbara, Serge Reggiani. I have a few names, and it was like songwriters that my parents were listening to when they were young. And most of those guys, they also have a lot of pretty sad songs. And I realized when I was, let's say, 25, that I could identify to those guys as well. And that's when I started listening to their music a lot, that something in my brain happened, and I was like, okay, I think I picked up some tips about how to write a song in French. So far it was just poems, and I couldn't sing on it.
But you say you wrote poems from the age of 15.
Yeah.
So do you know why you started writing poems? Well, what kind of...
Well, it came from a very sad. It's all about sadness, I think. Shit, man. I think I'm a pretty happy person in general, but when I'm sad, I feel like I've got to write it. And it was. I was sad because of a girl. Of course, that happens. And the first text that I wrote was a letter that I wrote on a notebook, so I knew that I would never send this letter, but I had to write it for that very specific girl. And from that time, I realized how good it felt to write, and so I kept on writing, and I realized that there was something really good for myself writing stuff.